Welcome, fellow nature enthusiasts, to the electrifying Conservationists Assembled podcast. Join us in uniting with the planet's bravest wildlife defenders to raise awareness and ignite change for the survival of all our animal friends. Whether you're a seasoned conservationist or new to the animal kingdom, this podcast is where your inner animal fan can run wild. Today we're scaling into the mystical realm of the ghost of the mountain, the snow leopard, with our special guest, the one and only Cassie Jones. What's in store for you today? Get ready as Cassie and I unveil the secrets of these snow leopards, perfectly adapted for their extreme habitats unlike any other feline. We'll also put the spotlight on projects dedicated to saving these majestic creatures, plus we'll uncover the threats to their status on this planet. Let's give Cassie a roaring round of applause as she joins us on the wild ride of the Conservationists Assembled podcast. Cassie, thank you for your time and gracing the podcast with your presence today. How are you?
Hi, Johnny. I'm really well, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, really, really well, thank you. I'm excited for this. Certainly a species that I think more people are aware of now, but certainly a lot left under the surface to discuss. So yeah, I'm really excited. So first off, could you then tell us about snow leopards, please?
Yeah, so snow leopards are part of the big cat family, and they are found in the mountainous habitats of Central Asia in 12 different countries from Afghanistan to China. They are one of the smaller species of big cat, and they have some really unique features and adaptations, such as their thick fur and extremely long tails.
Fantastic. And so we're talking about those adaptations because they do have probably one of the more extremer environments of the big cat family. So what is the purpose of some of these adaptations?
Yeah, totally. So they come from quite an extreme environment. And the climate that they have to sort of be adapted to can be very cold, and they have the long tail basically helps to keep them warm. So they will actually wrap it around themselves when they're resting or sleeping, and that helps to keep them warm. Obviously, their lovely thick fur helps to insulate them as well. And also, actually, I should add that the tail helps with their agility and balance, because obviously living on mountain sides, they need to be very agile. So yeah, they've got some amazing adaptations to help them to survive in that kind of environment.
Yeah, actually, now that you mention that, I remember seeing a video years ago of a snow leopard like falling vertically down a mountain, but it
Yep.
managed to catch the I think it was a sheep or of some species in its mouth, and it held onto that sheep while it was falling.
Yeah.
And then yeah, just got up as if nothing had happened, and yeah, so that was just insane. I'll have to see if I can find it, but yeah, perfect example of what that tail is used for.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So despite then coming from on such an extreme environment and assuming one where maybe there's not huge populations of people, what are the classifications and population trends surrounding snow leopards?
So snow leopards were actually classified by the IUCN back in 2017 on the red list as vulnerable. Now, this was actually a change from their previous classification, which was endangered, which might sound like good news, but it was actually down to the way the data had been interpreted previously rather than reflecting an increase in population. So basically, when they were listed as endangered back in 2008, in reality, they should have been listed as vulnerable back then. So the population numbers vary quite a lot between different sources. You could look at one source and see one thing, another source and see another. Um, and due to their really very elusive nature, their huge range and the remote habitat that they live in, it's really difficult to study them and know exactly how many there are. So it is thought to be somewhere between 4,000 and 6,000, but we don't know for definite. And unfortunately, the population trend is decreasing, and it's actually predicted that there'll be a decline of around 10% over the next 3 generations of snow leopard, which is about 22 years, which is a bit worrying.
Yeah, that's very, very quick. And I suppose that highlights something that's quite important to tell our listeners is that obviously, yeah, it's commonplace to see these classifications for animals when you go to a zoo and they've got the signage, and but there's still a lot that we don't know about how those classifications are given out, because it's quite easy to assume that it's solely a numerical value, but there's probably a lot more to it than that.
Yeah, exactly. Huge amounts go into it. And, population dynamics is a very complicated thing. So it's looking at numbers of breeding individuals and adults, taking into account how many young there are, but then also taking into account the low survival rate of young. So yeah, it's definitely quite complicated.
And then focusing then on what hopefully won't happen, but that potential for it, that 10% decline in the next 20 years or so. What would be causing that decline so rapidly?
So there are several threats facing snow leopards in the wild. And those threats actually vary greatly between the different home range countries. So again, it is quite a complex issue. But so some examples of some threats would be so the increasing numbers of livestock which are living in snow leopard habitat means that sometimes snow leopards will predate on people's goats, sheep, etc. Um, and those people rely on that livestock to survive. And losing animals to predation is a huge, huge problem for them, which can result sadly in humans killing snow leopards to try and protect their livestock that they rely on so heavily for their survival. With that as well, poaching is also a problem, and snow leopards are poached despite being a protected species because there's a demand for the illegal trade in their fur and bones and things like that. But not only poaching of snow leopards, also the poaching and decline in the number of the snow leopard's natural prey species, such as ibex and blue sheep, is also a problem. Um, and the decline in these species can also make predation on livestock more likely. So unfortunately, it becomes a bit of a cycle. So yeah, that's sort of one of the examples of threats facing snow leopards in the wild.
Yeah, you took the words out of my mouth there, and just listening to you describe that, the first thing that came to my head was that it was like very cyclical and very much so like a downward spiral. So, are there any in situ projects happening that are trying to stop that cyclical nature of the threats to snow leopards?
Yes, the Snow Leopard Trust is a fantastic in situ conservation organisation. I know that many zoos do support them, including my zoo that I work at as well. We've actually supported them for many years now, and they they tackle snow leopard conservation from many sort of different angles, but much of their efforts are community based, which is super, super important. So, working on practical solutions for human and animal coexistence. So, for example, they will provide families with access to compensation for livestock losses. When people have lost livestock to predation from snow leopards. They will also help to provide vaccinations for people's herds, which reduce livestock loss to disease, which helps people out. And they will also help to prevent predation by building safe enclosures for people to house their livestock in. So yeah, hopefully, work like that can help to break this cycle a little bit.
And so then, yep, you said that obviously yourself, or Hertfordshire Zoo, where you work, and lots of
Yep.
other zoos are helping support the Snow Leopard Trust. What form does that support from zoos manifest itself in?
So the funding that we provide here at Hertfordshire Zoo is sort of an annual donation that we will send out to the Snow Leopard Trust to help with all sort of aspects of their work.
Brilliant. So then they can just, transfer those funds wherever they feel is most
Exactly.
crucial at that time.
To which programs sort of need it. Definitely, yeah.
And then outside of that crucial funding, which certainly is a very vital aspect, what other things might zoos be doing, not necessarily with in-situ conservation at this moment in time, but maybe just as a standalone thing? What other things might zoos be doing that are helping contribute to the conservation of snow leopards?
Yeah, so as well as sort of supporting organisations like the Snow Leopard Trust with donations, zoos can sort of contribute to snow leopard conservation in other ways as well. So education is hugely important, and with thousands of people visiting zoos on an annual basis, there's a huge opportunity there to raise awareness for snow leopards and their conservation. And zoos can achieve this through having scheduled talks, providing educational materials, doing activities with school groups, for example. So yeah, there's a big education value in terms of zoos. Um, and zoos can also assist in research that can contribute to snow leopard conservation as well. So, for example, here at Hertfordshire Zoo, we took part in a study by the Snow Leopard Trust, helping to test the accuracy of the biologists that review the camera trap footage in identifying individual snow leopards. And we did this by setting up camera traps with our snow leopards and then sending the footage back to the Snow Leopard Trust, which they could then use in their study. And this is really important because identifying individuals on camera traps is the best way to sort of gather information about snow leopard populations. So it's really important that the identification is accurate. So yeah, that's another way that zoos can really get involved in snow leopard conservation.
And on that note, it was actually very recently, retrospectively, that we actually got first camera trap footage of the wild snow leopard, wasn't it?
Yeah, I wouldn't know exactly sort of when the first footage was gathered, but being that the areas they come from are not very accessible and that kind of thing, yeah, it's something that's probably taken a while to get to where we are now.
So yeah, certainly lots more left to achieve, and it certainly sounds important that zoos can provide that resource in terms of a research base for what we're learning about wild snow leopards.
Yeah, definitely.
So another part of your role, I understand, is that you help out with the EEP for the snow leopard. So can you just explain to us a little bit more about the function of the EEP and your role within it?
Yeah, so the EEP oversees the management of snow leopard populations in zoos, more specifically in EASA members throughout Europe. And the aim of this careful management is to maintain a healthy, genetically diverse zoo population. And that's basically a way of safeguarding the species for the future. Um, so the EEP itself is made up of a program coordinator who oversees it all, and then a committee. And I've actually been a committee member now on the Snow Leopard EEP since 2018. Um, and I should add that these roles, are actually voluntary, and they're normally carried out in addition to committee members' usual like zoological roles.
Amazing. And what first made you decide you wanted to get on board with the Snow Leopard Committee?
I think ever since sort of becoming a zookeeper, I've been really interested in the sort of management programs in the EEPs. So as soon as I saw an opportunity come up to join the Snow Leopard EEP, I decided I was going to go for it, especially as um, you know I look after snow leopards as part of my day-to-day job, and they're an amazing species. So yeah, I couldn't turn down the chance to get involved, really.
And what would you say that level of networking's done for you in your career?
I think it's just helped me to learn a lot, really, about how these programs work and what kind of involvement they have in managing this European population of snow leopards. Um, so yeah, as as the committee, we tend to discuss things like proposed moves of snow leopards between different collections, which has been really interesting to learn about. We discuss the breeding recommendations. So I've sort of, through my position, have learnt about the sort of stud book and looking at like the kinship of different individuals within the stud book. Also, non-breeding recommendations is something that we discuss as a committee as well. Enclosure design, when we've got zoos that are looking to bring in snow leopards as part of their plan. They send their enclosure designs for us to have a look at, so we get involved with that. And also, we'll discuss veterinary issues as well. So it's a massive learning opportunity, really, and getting to talk to sort of other committee members from a range of different sort of zoo backgrounds as well. So you've got keepers like myself, but also there are curators and vets on the committee as well. So yeah, it's a fantastic networking and learning opportunity.
Fantastic. Yeah, certainly. I think Tom, who I've had on the podcast, very much mirrored a lot of what you said in the sense that yeah, it is a learning opportunity, but it also makes you realize that you've got a lot to contribute to what other people are experiencing as well. So yeah, it does seem like a really good opportunity if anyone who is potentially considering becoming part of a committee of a species that they're interested in to get involved with.
Yeah, definitely. And actually, yes, as you say, it kind of shows what us ourselves can bring as well, because as far as I know, I think I'm the only keeper level committee member. So yeah, I can bring sort of my experience and knowledge from that angle.
And so bringing it back to snow leopard conservation then, how can everyone get involved with snow leopard conservation, even if they don't necessarily work within in-situ or ex-situ organisations?
So visiting zoos is a fantastic way for people to get involved in snow leopard conservation, especially those zoos that support the Snow Leopard Trust, for example. Um, People can learn about snow leopards, teach other people about snow leopards. You can also donate either your own time or funds to organisations like the Snow Leopard Trust. I should add, you could check out their online store, which actually sells beautiful handmade craft items. And these items are actually made by women in communities that share their home with snow leopards. And this is one of the other programs that the Snow Leopard Trust runs, and it's about empowering communities, particularly women, and giving them an alternative source of income. So yeah, go check out their website. It's really cool.
Yes, we'll definitely plug that. And that sounds like a very modern and inclusive and definitely just exactly the format of conservation that we should be looking at and doing more of. So thank you very
Yeah.
much for bringing that to the episode. So when you first started working with snow leopards or kind of even just snow leopards come onto your radar, was there a particular fact or experience with snow leopards that kind of made you appreciate them even more?
I think my favourite fact, I've actually already said. It's about their tail. I think it's just so amazing that they've got this massive tail and they use it as a scarf to help keep them warm. And apparently they'll use it to sort of cover the more sensitive areas like their nose, and it helps to stop them getting frostbite. So yeah, I think when I found that fact out, that's probably one of my favourites about them.
Yeah, I can certainly appreciate that. I suppose it's difficult when you've got such a cute, fluffy face to maybe think about the tail and its function. It certainly probably goes a bit below the radar. So yeah, I can certainly see
Yeah.
why you'd focus on that or remember that particularly. Do you remember what your first experience with a snow leopard was?
I think it must have been when I first started at Hertfordshire Zoo. It was Paradise Wildlife Park back then. And I started volunteering here around 2010. And I remember coming for like a little chat and induction about starting volunteering. And after we'd had that little chat, I was able to then sort of have a walk around, have a look at the zoo. And I went to the snow leopards, and there was a young female snow leopard at the time called Hara, and she just seemed like a really incredibly mischievous and playful individual. And as I was sort of looking at her through the window, she was sort of stalking me and sort of pouncing at the window. So yeah, I think that must have been the first time I'd ever really sort of experienced and got close to a snow leopard. So yeah, that's definitely something that stuck with me.
Yeah, it certainly sounds like something that would be a foundation of a great working relationship. So, thank you so much for giving us an insight into snow leopards and their background. Now we're going to switch track and we're just going to talk a bit more about your career and your background, because it certainly is quite a sought after industry, and it's certainly one where we like to pay it forward. So, could you tell our listeners about yourself and give us an insight into your journey to where you are currently in your career?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, it's going to sound really cliche. I'm sure everyone that you speak to probably says the same thing, but I knew from a very early age that I wanted to work with animals. There were various different phases. So, I think at one point I wanted to be a marine biologist. At one point I wanted to be a horse riding instructor. So, yeah, it changed, but it was always sort of animal based. Once I sort of reached work experience age at school, I did my placement at a small local zoo near where I grew up. And from then, it kind of became quite clear that zookeeper was likely going to be the career for me. Because I actually, after my placement, continued to volunteer at the zoo, and I actually ended up getting a weekend job as well. Um, I did that up until I went to university, where I studied animal behaviour and natural history. And then once I graduated from that, I basically just did as much volunteering as I possibly could at different zoos and wildlife conservation charities, just to get some experience, get my foot in the door. Um, and eventually I got a seasonal zookeeper job at Chessington, at the zoo there. And then since then, I've gone on to work at Battersea Park Children's Zoo, and then Paradise Wildlife Park, or as it's now known, Hertfordshire Zoo. Um, and since coming to Hertfordshire Zoo, I've sort of worked my way from starting out as a cover keeper, onto carnivore keeper, and I'm now the deputy of the large carnivore section. But on top of that, as well as the carnivore deputy, I'm also the research officer, and a member of the conservation committee here at the zoo. So lots to keep me busy.
Certainly lots to keep you busy. And the natural history aspect of your degree is so interesting. You just don't see animal behaviour and natural history at all now. So that's really,
Yeah,
really cool.
definitely. Yeah, I was quite lucky that the degree was quite flexible, and I basically did a combined degree that covered the two different topics, and I was able to sort of pick modules from each side. So it made it, really varied and really interesting.
That's really, really cool. So has there been, and it's okay if you say a snow leopard or a different species, it doesn't have to be a snow leopard specific bit anymore if you do want to go off track a bit, but has there been an individual animal or species in your career that you gained a particular attachment or relationship with?
It's actually been different at the different zoos that I've worked at. So when I was at Chessington, there was a capybara called Xena, who was just amazing, and she absolutely loved scratches. So she'd just sit there with you and let you scratch her basically, and all her hair would stand up on end, and it was fantastic. So yeah, she was definitely a highlight when I was there. At Battersea Park Children's Zoo, there was a little emperor tamarin called Callie, who was just super cheeky and always made me laugh with his antics. And now at Hertfordshire Zoo, I'd say I've probably got a soft spot for our two Amma tiger sisters, Alina and Siberia, just because they're super sassy and beautiful. And I just love them. And then of course, Jessie, our snow leopard, she's quite a superstar. She's quite famous. She went viral. Yeah, she's just awesome. She's such a huge personality. She makes me laugh every day. So yeah, big soft spot for her, definitely.
Amazing. Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? How even though you might have that one particular species or group of animals that you know you're going to work with or that you're going to pursue, but there are always that group or individual that still, for some reason, somehow manages to keep a spot in your heart. So yeah,
Yeah, definitely. You know,
capybara
it's
sounds hilarious, and I can imagine that yeah,
yeah,
endless
you know,
amount of
it's
scratches.
all about the individual personalities, isn't it? They're all so different. So
Absolutely. So you've mentioned that your role is very multifaceted in the sense that yep, you do the research, you do the keeping, but you also do the conservation committee, and of course the sitting on the snow leopard committee as well.
yep.
Do you have a particular favourite part of your role?
To be honest, I enjoy it all. Um, you know, I enjoy every aspect of it. But yeah, I think my favorite part of being a zookeeper is it's getting to know the individual animals, and spending time with them, learning who they are. It's a privilege, really. I feel very lucky. So yeah, that's probably the best part of being a zookeeper.
Yeah, I'm sure many keepers agree. It's exactly the reason we get into it. So
Yeah.
in terms of people that we work with, then, or people that maybe guided us, were there any influences on you and your career path?
Yeah, I'd have to say so. Going back to my work experience when I was in school, and you know, then volunteering at this little zoo, there was some zookeepers there at the time that basically made that possible for me. There was Neil and Marco were both working there, and um, they were the ones that actually, at the end of my placement, sort of said to the boss, you know, she's really good. Let's get her back as a volunteer. And you know, had they not have done that, I might not have ended up where I am today. So massively grateful to them, and that was a huge influence. They taught me so much as well. Um, and then on top of that, really, my mum and dad, because without their support, again, like I wouldn't be where I am today. They've been continuously supportive of all my career choices. So yeah, obviously massively lucky to have had that support throughout my life as well.
Fantastic. Shout out to Neil and Marco and mum and dad.
Exactly. Yes.
So, what advice would you give to someone looking to pursue a career in conservation?
You've just got to get as involved as you can. Just get as involved as possible. You know, go volunteer, go to conservation events and talks whenever you go to a zoo or visit a conservation organization. Talk to people, ask questions, and yeah, just get stuck in as much as you possibly can, and don't give up. Just keep trying.
Very wise words. Take that leap and
Yeah,
yeah, see where it takes you and just enjoy the journey.
yeah, definitely.
So, what are some of your proudest achievements to date?
That's really hard. I think sort of getting onto the Snow Leopard EEP committee was obviously a very proud moment. But then, you know, there are just so many. I suppose another one I could mention on top of that would be some training that I've done with our two tigers. I'm quite proud of the work that myself and the team as well, not just me. My team have been massively involved in it as well. But you know, having siblings living together with two very different personalities, they get on well most of the time, but as you can imagine, sometimes they don't. Um, and anyone that's worked around large carnivores will know that shifting them when you want to go and clean or service their habitat or anything like that can be difficult at the best of times, let alone when you've got two individuals that are very different. We were having issues with the slightly more dominant individual sort of chasing the other one out of the area we were trying to shut them into, which wasn't very helpful. So what we did is we've done some training with them to basically do cooperative feeding. So the more dominant individual, Alina, who was chasing Siberia away, has learnt that all she needs to do is sit nice and calmly in her spot, let her sister come in and have some treats too, and then she's going to get lots of treats herself. So yeah, really simple, but really proud of how it's gone, because it now works really well and makes our life as keepers looking after them much, much easier.
It sounds like, yeah, everyone's a lot less stressed.
Yeah, exactly.
But
It,
yeah,
it makes the whole process less stressful for everybody involved.
yeah, definitely fantastic. And so, what surprised you most when you started zookeeping?
Um, that's a tricky one. I don't know. I think because I kind of started zookeeping, I suppose, at like 15 years old, not much really can surprise me at this point. But yeah, I think just I guess what surprised me is how different every single animal is. And yeah, I've mentioned about different personalities and stuff like that. And yeah, I guess that, it can be quite surprising at how different two individuals of the same species can be. Like chalk and cheese.
Yeah. I guess that is surprising. It's certainly something that you wouldn't consider until you're in there and
Yeah,
doing that.
exactly. People often that aren't around animals sort of view them as almost like robotic, going
Mm.
off instinct and stuff like that, but it's totally not the case. They're all so different, and they're all individual.
So that was maybe a misunderstanding that people sometimes think about animals. So what do you think some of the other common misunderstanding about zoos or ex situ conservation might be?
I think, unfortunately, that there's a bit of a misunderstanding amongst sort of the general public that zoos don't actually do anything for conservation. Um, I think perhaps it's that we're not getting the message out there enough. We're not shouting more about the conservation work that we are doing, and I think that's changing. I think zoos are getting a lot better at sharing um, the amazing work that they are doing for conservation. So it is improving. But yeah, I think for a long time that's been a bit of a common misconception, is that zoos are purely just for entertainment and not doing anything for conservation, which of course, as we know, is completely inaccurate.
Yeah, definitely very inaccurate. And I think it's probably important now to highlight that zoos are very open to acknowledging good. Well, there is such a thing as a good zoo,
Yeah,
and there is such a thing as a bad zoo, and that there are
of
two
course.
very different things. There is a clear cut difference, and for, I suppose, listeners or just anyone looking to go and visit a zoo, maybe having trouble defining which zoo they should go and visit, is to look at, if you're in the UK, look at zoos that are part of BRZA or ERZA or
Yeah,
WAZA, because that is a network of good zoos who are a support system. They have a common goal, but also actually that zoos have to pay in to
yeah,
those memberships. And if it was
exactly.
purely about putting money in pockets, zoos wouldn't
Yeah,
be a part of these memberships. So yeah, I think
yeah,
hopefully that'll be a takeaway, is that, you know, doing your research into which zoos you should visit and which ones you shouldn't
yeah,
is very
yeah.
important.
Definitely. No, that's such a good point. Yeah, there are good zoos and there are bad zoos. And good zoos are the ones that like you say, members of these associations. They're actively involved in conservation, education, research. And yeah, that's kind of the work that good zoos are doing. So yeah, very good point.
Yeah, and I hope, like you say, we do start shouting about it even more. I do think there's a shift happening, like you say, and yeah, hopefully we'll get more support for good zoos globally. conversations. So thank you so much for your time today talking to us about these truly phenomenal cats. We'll be sure to keep a close eye on everything that is happening in the world of snow leopards and the incredible work of Hertfordshire Zoo.
You're very welcome. It was lovely to chat to you, and thank you for having me on.
So I'm going to round off the episode a little bit differently today with a poem from a book called Two Steps Behind, which is a collection of poems written by a lady called Dawn Lawrence, and it's a collection of poems about rare and endangered species. So naturally, this poem is called The Snow Leopard. I'm difficult to find and track, I'm elusive and so shy, that I've become a legend, and here's the reason why. Snow leopards are the rarest things, magnificent to see, but as there are so few of us, we're making history. The Himalayan mountain range is one place where I roam. Amongst the craggy, snow-capped peaks, I travel all alone. I live in alpine meadows too, in China, Pakistan, in India and in Russia, where I seldom see a man. A descendant of the saber-tooth, Cebu is my name, a name the locals gave to me before the hunters came. I'm called the phantom ghost cat, since I'm so rarely seen, amongst the rocky wilderness in my coat of white and cream. At dawn and dusk you'll find me, for then I seek my prey, wild sheep and goats, and hare and deer, but then I sleep by day. My long soft coat of thickest fur protects me as I go, wandering amongst the peaks of mountains deep in snow. I'm different from the tiger cat, you will not hear me roar, but just one growl, one cough or bark will shake you to the core. No other cat has such a tail, so long, so thick, so warm, a blanket made to cover me in raging wind and storm. It also helps to balance me on dizzy rocky heights. To see me leap a great crevice is one of life's delights. My furry feet like snowshoes are made to walk on snow, like the great pads of the lynx cat who treads where I might go. I'm wary and elusive to a magical degree, but even with my camouflage, man dares to still hunt me. Most mysterious, most beautiful of all big cats on earth, surviving in such hostile climes, how can one count my worth? Few humans will have seen me, though they will always try, and after all I've told you, you'll know the reason why. And that does bring today's episode of the Conservationists Assembled podcast to a close. I am your host, Johnny Bloxham, and as always, a huge thank you to all of you for tuning in. If you have enjoyed this episode, please like, share and leave a review. It really helps us to continue spreading the word and sharing some amazing stories from some amazing conservationists all around the world, but more so to highlight, the plight of so many different threatened species on this planet. Furthermore, there are plenty of opportunities for you to get involved with the podcast. I would love for this podcast to really be a community, and so if you ever have any questions that you'd love to have featured on an episode, or a particular species that you'd love to have an episode on, or if you have any photos of snow leopards that you're just a fan and you want to share, and I can put them out on the podcast social media. You can DM us on Instagram or email conservationists@outlook.com, and we'll be sure to share some of your awesome photos. But until then, thank you once again. This has been the Conservationists Assembled podcast, and I'll catch you next time.